Hello, everyone. Welcome to my video. Sorry for looking like a hot ass mess. Okay. What is empathy? To begin this video, and I wrote in my journal, I am very, well, not informed of empathy research. I literally just learned what empathy was. Um, I'm 23. I learned about it when I was 21, probably. So, once again, very not informed of it. And so, what is empathy? I like the idea, and they say it in the second reading about domestic violence, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoe. Like that is what I would explain to anyone. The ability to not sympathize, and cause pity for someone, but can I at least understand what you're going through someone's narrative or storytelling. Um, I also like in the same reading, um, particularly when we teach people to use their sociological imagination, okay, and connect larger social forces with individual experiences. So I like that as someone who identifies as a white woman, okay, like that's my experience. So when a woman of color tells me their experience, can I empathize with that and find my common interests or we have similarities. Okay, yeah, we're both women. But through her storytelling, can I connect larger social forces of being like, yes, I mean, she's a woman of color, like that is definitely going to be a marginalized community. I know that, and then her individual experiences and kind of bring them together. So but I mean, kind of kindergartner definition, can you put yourself in someone else's situation and not cause sympathy? I think I personally, someone who hates pity, and we'll probably talk about this, that's a big one for me. Can empathy be learned? I think the readings would suggest that like empathy is learned, right? You're not born with or actually, wait, I wrote in my journal. First reading, Advancing the Sociology of Empathy. They literally say we are not born with the ability to empathize, but rather we gain these skills through interactions with individuals. I don't believe anyone is born sensitive and naturally like nice. Like, I don't know, my sister's really nice. She probably did get a gene, but for the most part, like no one is born with the ability to empathize with others. It's going to take skill or experience and practice, but it also takes like another knowledge of these individual forces in our society that do marginalize and cause like, you know, I want to say disharm, but like um, discriminations against like big or small. Um, so it does also take like this ability to empathize, but it also takes like knowledge to empathize with someone. Um, so yeah, I would say the readings all suggest that empathy is learned 100%. What role does sociology have in promoting empathy? This question to me was like a little bit difficult to understand or to answer just because my background is in communication studies. So from what I know, sociology is like the study of our human society. I'm once again, please, MA sociology students do not come for me. But like how our society is going to operate. Once again, I understand it's a really broad definition, but what role does sociology have in promoting empathy? I think so many, and I was even connecting a lot of this week's readings, specifically um, examining the impact. Oh yeah, domestic violence simulation in the sociology classes. I'm like, this is a great, great, great connection to Melissa's section. Um, as we discussed the effectiveness of sexual assault programs. And we hinted at empathy. We'd never probably said the words like empathy. But yeah, how can those programs build empathy among audience members? Um, I also really liked Sam Richards' TED Talk, which was discussed in the domestic violence one, I believe. Um, so how can we build empathy, but for example, like when there's such a strong hatred for the Asian American community, for example, in our world. So I think the study of sociology acknowledges like we don't live in a perfect world. So how can we build empathy? Did I answer the question? What role does sociology have in promoting empathy? Okay, so I guess what role does sociology have acknowledging these different aspects, whatever your research interest, I guess specifically would be like, so for Melissa, sexual assault, how can we promote empathy in sexual assault awareness programs? I would say like my research is in like nonprofit social movement organizations. So how can I build empathy, not sympathy, just plain old empathy in building a more sound society for all? I think it's interesting, and the reason why I was really drawn to the first reading specifically is when they discussed the comparison between empathy and social movements. Let me see if I can find it. Um, because my thesis is over social movements, looking at nonprofit reproductive justice sector and like looking at, so the last 4 years have sucked. So what messages have been sent through the mission and vision statements or from leaders in these nonprofits that made people want to continue the fight because it's fucking, oop, it's exhausting. Um, so I was shocked to read how these movements promote humanitarian values while using empathy as their frame. I knew this, just was not like aware of it. Because a lot of what I have felt for the past 4 years has been anger, and I've channeled that a lot in my like social movement messages to other people. Like, if you aren't mad, you aren't paying attention. Rather than like painting like a narrative of like, hey, imagine like you're a 20-year-old young girl, the father of the child is not in your life and you are faced with like an unexpected pregnancy because like statistically shown this happens to 1 in 4 women. What like are do you feel how do you feel um and like for someone who has been in that situation, like I just haven't felt like comfortable to be like, yeah, like imagine you like you have a pregnancy scare, like how do you feel? Like that's a hard like thing to explain. Um so yeah, I really like actually using empathy more so. I think it's a lot more powerful. Especially, with like we saw with immigration, they used animal activism. Um, I would say like the part that I'm like, I don't know about animal activism is like a lot of like what I see on TV is like, the more sympathetic, like I feel sorry for the dogs, you know? Yeah, but that's just my opinion. Did I answer all these questions? yeah, I think I did. What is empathy? Can empathy be learned? What role does sociology have in promoting empathy? The third one was a little bit more trickier for me to answer, but I would say like sociology's role in promoting empathy is to incorporate it in all these different sectors, right? Because sociology is so broad. So how can we incorporate empathy within sexual assault, within race, which we'll get to later in the semester? In mind, like social movements. So like I'm passionate about reproductive justice. How can I incorporate more empathy in reproductive justice? Um, Point I want to make. How long do I have in my video? Oh, okay, I'm at 8.5. Maybe I'll say it in class. If you want to stop watching this video, go ahead. Um, it's interesting. I'm finishing on my interviews, and a person today literally, as I was like thinking about if I had to make this video, was talking about how her organization, it's called Medical Students for Choice, has given her the skills to be empathetic. And she's like, for example, she's a medical student, and she's like, I entered this organization being like, no one wants to have an abortion. Like, no one would. It's traumatic for anyone who goes through it. Like, they would probably regret it. Like, it's gonna be so hard. And she got to her organization, and the leaders were like, just so you know, like, not all women have a traumatic time from it, Like, and they also don't regret it. Like 95% of women do not regret their abortion. So kind of like you need to like, check your own biases. And she was really honest about it and I really appreciated it. But just this feeling of like she wasn't a maybe I don't want to say she wasn't able to empathize, but she got to the organization and this further into the social movement and she's like, okay, so maybe I thought no one would everyone thought that, going through an abortion was going to be traumatic. But as I'm in this organization, it's not my place to determine whether they think it's traumatic. So I really liked how I'm seeing empathy more so in my research now that like I'm more aware of it. I am ending this video now because I've talked too long, but thank you for listening.